Hello and welcome to another Warcraft 3 audio commentary. This is going to be a 1v1 game on the Battle.net solo ladder. I'm going to be playing random against a human player, Kaio Flare. I think this guy must be in Asia or something because I played him once the game before this and had about 310, 320 ping all game. Typically, I don't get that unless I'm playing somebody from quite far. This game, my ping was a lot better. I think it was like around 70 or 80, so not exactly, probably not exactly the most fair, uh, assuming he actually is from Asia and had a similar ping that I had, a high ping in this particular game. This may not be the best, sort of the best example of his actual skill level, but at any rate, this is a pretty good game. Pretty interesting strategy from him. Pretty similar to what he did the first game, even though it was a human mirror, at least in terms of the early game, right? So he's going to go Archmage Footman. Pretty standard stuff. Excuse me. And he's going to be sort of, I don't say aggressively, but he's going to make quite a lot of scout farms here. I'm going to do a ghoul opening with the Dreadlord first. Now, the expansion on this map, both, or sort of all of the expansions, are actually quite strong creep camps, right? In certain ways, right? This one, I would like to go for, I like this sort of creep route to go here, here, and then this, because it drops a pretty good item and it gives you level 3. And it's a little bit easier to manipulate the creeps at this camp, because I don't think, as far as I recall, the creeps don't, at these red sort of spawn camps, they won't always focus like the weakest unit, right? Whereas at these middle camps, the Gargantuan Sea Turtle level 7 that does chaos damage, which typically is an indicator, the chaos damage creeps, they will typically focus like weak units that are close and attacking them. Right now, if it's ranged units, it's a little different. But if you're like melee units, and they start to, like footmen or ghouls or whatever, and they start to get low, or if a ranged unit is relatively close in basically melee range, they will basically prioritize killing that unit that's really low, even if you pull it back and then attack it again, right? If it's close, it's going to go really, it's really going to continue to focus until that unit is either dead or moved away, right? So I don't really like that, and this Gargantuan Sea Turtle has a massive amount of hit points at 1250, whereas like this level 6 one, 750, only 2 base armor. Now if you add up all the hit points of like all the creeps at these camps, there's big consumables that drop at these metal camps, so they're pretty good items as well. These spawn camps drop pretty good permanent items generally, like Belt of Giant Strength, Robe of the Magi. Boots of Elven Skin or Boots of Cloth Loss is basically the sort of bad item typically. But anyways, I send the Dreadlord over here to harass with Karen Swarm. I noticed that he's getting a scout tower. I probably could have just gone on this tower. I should have actually just had the skeleton start attacking it, and like I could have put the Dreadlord here, the 2 skeletons next to him, and he actually probably would have struggled to actually repair it. His peasants were out of position, and I had plenty of time to do it, but I wasn't exactly sure the timing, because if it finishes at, I don't know, maybe like 40% health, then the armor and everything, I'm basically not going to be able to cancel or destroy it with just the Dreadlord and skeletons, and then it's going to start popping, shots on the Dreadlord, which is going to mess up, or not mess up, but it's going to feed back on his mana. And now I have 120, going on 120 mana. There's a lot of weak peasants in here. It would be really nice and really a potential idea, if the early game goes the way it does. Like, he basically gives me a little bit of free time while he's out of position creeping for me to hit a lot of really big Heron Swarms on his workers. Basically, if I sneak in, 4 or 5 ghouls, and then, staff, or have the Dreadlord sort of roaming outside, ready to hit another big Heron Swarm, because I do have the mana to do so, or staff in there, I could clean up these peasants in the middle of his attack, and I could probably kill at least 4 or 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, or actually 6. Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's maybe like 8 fairly significantly damaged peasants, right? So now killing all 8, especially if his army's there, would probably be a little bit difficult. He's going to be aggressively sort of creeping my camps, Again, you see this scout farm, he sees where my army is, he sees what my level is. He could have looked at my items, which, again, competent or a pretty skilled player would probably do that to know. But, again, he knows that I haven't, probably knows that I didn't go do that red camp because of this farm. Right, so I put a ghoul attacking this farm. This is going to cost me lumber if I leave him sitting here attacking it, which I will. If it actually gets destroyed, it's going to be pretty bad. I was looking to go for this camp, but he'd already done it, so I'm like, okay, let me throw a carrion swarm at all these clustered floaties, and let me back up. So I've pretty much abandoned going in here and trying to mock up these ghoul kills, but and he did have scout farms in the center, so if I was going to do that, I would have probably sent these ghouls towards the tavern and then in from this angle, right? Because he was sort of, I feel like his army was over here, and it was, actually. But, so I don't exactly want to run into a bunch of footmen if my goal is to go for the peasants, right? So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab these ghouls and, another rod of necromancy, and I'm just going to clean up this farm. And then I'm going to get some more skeletons of these corpses, and I'm going to go for the red camp. I don't know that he's necessarily here. Do I send a skeleton somewhere? I feel like I sent a skeleton somewhere, but we'll see. But yeah, I don't know where he is. I don't think I actually did see this peasant. So he sees me with the peasant. He's going to pull it. He's going to build it. Is he going to build another scout farm here? I don't know what he does. But anyways, he's doing this shop. He gets level 3 at the shop, and then he's going to beeline right to my main base, which actually already has an Nerubian tower, 3 lumber ghouls, and a fiend sitting here. I could have sent the fiend in my army, but I was like, I'll have the fiend in case he, again, players love to do these, sort of run bys at, once they get level 3 and stuff, and he is no different. He is indeed going to poke around. This tower's in a good position. It covers the front of the base. It is arguably a little bit exposed, right? If my army's not here, and he has, he has about 7 footmen here, level 2 water elementals. He's going to pop a second one here, so he's going to have quite a lot of DPS to hit this tower. If I'd play this cleanly, right, I could have, certainly could have, maybe I should have killed the item creep a little bit sooner, so I could just staff the hero back, potentially, but I end up just burning the TP, and he does dive this Nerubian tower, and he does get the kill, but it does cost him a lot of footmen here. Let's see, one. Oh my gosh, is this one going to get away with 10 hit points? Hopefully not, but it seems like it actually will. So that's pretty rough. So yeah, I didn't do quite as much damage as I hoped. I need to chase this down. I've got plenty of mana, so I do think I chase him. Let me see. I send some of the ghouls back to lumber because I am at 214 lumber. And my tech is, I haven't gotten a second hero yet, and I'm teching to tier 3, so I'm going to want a third hero, the destroyer upgrade, potentially, E-bombs, disease cloud. These are things that I'm thinking, and, they all sort of have their place, right? He has water elementals. If he goes casters, destroyers will be good. If he goes more footmen, or, sort of a small amount of towers, like in his base, he right now has only an arcane tower. It's going to be good. Now, luckily here I have a staff not on cooldown. So as MK shows up, he bolts me. He's only level 1. The cooldown for bolt is, I want to say it's 9 seconds. And the cooldown for the staff is 5 seconds. And the stun, is it 3 seconds? So yeah, I think you basically, if you use the staff, as soon as you can, after he stormbolts you, I don't think he can actually stormbolt you again. I think you just have that 1 second, basically. But if you're a little bit slow, you run the risk of him having enough time to stormbolt you again. Also, if he has bash, those attacks, could interrupt the staff, right? But he's only level 1, so I know he doesn't, since he is stormbolting me, I know he does not have bash, so there's no chance for that. But as soon as he gets level 2, if he indeed has bash, but I think with all these ghouls and stuff, he's probably going to go Thunderclap anyway, possibly. But it's just sort of player preference. I typically like to go Thunderclap against, ground armies, right? Especially ghouls. It's quite strong, and it's pretty good against fiends and heroes as well. But it's also very mana intensive. So, and being able to just luck out and hit a bash at a sort of inopportune moment, specifically against staff or some kind of channeling ability, right? Or a unit trying to run is, it is good, but it's not very consistent. So, but that just that sort of chance, again, specifically against staff or something is really good. And he's seen me use the staff now, so as it'd be interesting to know when he hits level 2 what he does at that point. But there's not really going to be any other moments in this game where I actually need staff. I think I actually might eventually sell it, right? But it was very, very useful in that scenario. And one of the reasons I picked it up was it sometimes is very dangerous if you can sneak a ghoul or two into like the main base. The peasants have healed just their natural regen sort of over the course of this game, have basically healed away all the damage that I did. So there's only like one that's still significantly damaged, honestly. So that's not really an issue. I could have staffed here. He's got slow, but I'm like, he doesn't have another Stormbolt. So I'm like, let me just have the statue. I need to leave the statue sort of standing to just continuously heal. There's a cooldown on that heal spell, so I can move a little and then heal, move a little, blah blah blah. But I want to make sure I'm getting the sustain. Standing on the blight gives me even more sustain, right? But also the other thing is he has priest now, so in terms of he's got sustain as well. We both have sustain. His army is really no magic immune stuff right now, so my combination of Dreadlord Lich is actually quite dangerous, and I have an orb on the Lich as well, which is pretty good. I don't think I actually noticed how low his MK was here, but he does have boots of speed, so he can run around. A natural born sprinter over here, Gimli. He's gonna be running around. Like I said, if I threw a Nova on him, right, I probably could have actually threatened to kill him, but he doesn't have Adept Sorks in a little bit. And he's actually built his sanctums here, which is interesting. I don't know if he was attempting to sort of deny me use of the tavern. I know sometimes Dark Ranger is like a popular pick as a third hero. Got those 2 guard towers up here. This is an interesting zoning tactic. I haven't not really ran into this very frequently. I've done this a little bit more as a sort of a trolley or just an experimental sort of thing with different races, right? And you can, like I said, you can build, or I haven't said it, but you can build buildings like in the middle in a lot of spots without aggroing those expos. So they will aggro if you get a little too close, so they are gold mine creeps. Now he's gonna get really close to killing this Lich. I was waiting for, he didn't have mana for Stormbolt, which I noticed, but I was waiting if he did somehow manage to get mana or was getting close to killing him, I'd have the TP. He switched off and started focusing the Dreadlord. Again, I knew his mana level. I checked it, so I was, if he had some kind of mana item or something, that would be a different story. It's always a risk there. But if he doesn't, then you can sort of, you can more easily track the mana with the mana bar. It's a little bit of an eyeball thing, like if you sort of know what 75 mana more or less looks like, right, on a level 1 or different level heroes. Obviously, it's a little, if they're like level 2, 3, 4, it's going to look different. If they have mana items, right, then obviously a percentage of that is going to be less or more raw mana depending on. So like if somebody has 400 mana, for example, obviously half of that is going to be 200. So you have to be a little bit careful. But I did look at the specific number at various points in those situations, because I did, like I said, losing a hero is one way to throw a game that otherwise should be in my favor, which again, in this case, I'm tier 3. He's doing a fine job creeping and stuff. He does get level 4 here. I'd be more worried about level 2 on the MK. He is going to get level 2 on the MK not here, or actually not from these creeps, because I killed both of these, I believe, but from the ghouls, I think. So, going to get some free shots at towers. I'm like, okay, I don't really have any incentive to engage him, in the tower range. He should have gotten that last shot. Cleaning both of these up is going to get my Lich level 2, which is really good. And I pick up a DK third. The DK is going to be a decent amount of damage. He's going to scale, all third heroes do scale with the leveling as units are killed and stuff. He's going to go ahead and spend a lot of resources, and this may be where he sort of made the game really easy for me. He's built 3 guard towers here. He's getting another guard tower and an arcane tower. And I do send an Acolyte over here thinking, eyeing the expansion, because there's Blight that I dropped, Sacrificial Skull. So if I can keep him on the defensive, I could possibly expand, though to be honest, playing this one base is probably the smarter idea for a couple of reasons. One is, he has built towers here, which are not defending his main base really at all. I think I'm actually going to mess up and, for some reason, rally by these towers in a couple of situations, but I don't really lose anything. I might take some damage from them, but the other thing is these towers won't protect his main. These sanctums are not in his main, so in terms of if we fight his main, he does have a shop, he does have one arcane tower, he does have the potential to call, a decent number of militia, and he's got a barracks here and an altar, but he's tier 2. Like I said, one tower here, one arcane tower, 2 guard towers here, 3, going to be 4 guard towers here, an arcane tower, and he's going to build 2 more towers. Like, what is he towering this for? Like, he doesn't know I'm going to, it's sort of a gamble where, maybe I try to expand there, but if I send an Acolyte over there and it gets killed before he builds anything, right, the sort of the best case scenario for this would be I send an Acolyte, just start building Ziggurats, and I don't notice, and he actually manages to start up, like 3 Ziggurats, and he instantly cancels them all or something, or maybe even the gold mine. But like realistically, what's the more likely thing to happen is I either don't send an Acolyte over here at all, or I do send an Acolyte, and then I see before I build anything, like, oh, there's a bunch of towers, right? But I guess like his ideal scenario, but he's spending a bunch of resources on a gamble, right? Yeah, if he manages to cancel like a gold mine, 2 or 3 Ziggurats, obviously that and kill an Acolyte, that is going to be quite a blow to me in terms of resources wasted. But there's no guarantee that's going to happen, and I would probably bet against that really happening most of the time, right? I can't honestly affording like 3 Ziggurats in a gold mine, right? In a situation where he's already like teched, and he had some scout farms and stuff over there, and he's sort of being very aggressive, right? It would be a little bit greedy for me to try that, I think. So anyways, we get this battle here. I've got a Destroyer. I've got Disease Cloud A-Bomb, which Disease Cloud, I've learned from the other side of this matchup, playing the human side. Disease Cloud against like low hit point footmen, even rifles and priests and stuff, it fights back against their healing. I hit level 2. This was quite unfortunate. I hit level 2. It's like, ooh, level 2, Death Pact could save me. The problem is I am just like 3 mana shy of Death Pact. And he is going to kill me at like 48, 49 mana here. Because it's slow, I didn't dispel the slow. He killed me basically right before I could Death Pact anything. I've got a Mana Steel item. I hit it on one of his casters because he was TPing. I couldn't hit it on his Archmage. And then I Nova'd and killed another Rifleman. So he is in, and I killed the MK there. So he's in really bad shape. And then there's these breakers. I'm like, well, the breakers are here. Let me kill these. They're here. A-bombs do a good job killing them. A-bombs have a lot of hit points. So even though they have heavy armor, which seems like not a great idea against mass casters, and one A-bomb he can sort of try to deal with, right? But again, look, 1175 hit points, and Vampiric War level 2, right? And a Death Knight to throw heals. Now, he killed the Death Knight, but that means he wasn't focusing like the A-bomb. So, and even if the A-bomb dies, if he spreads Disease Cloud and everything, it's quite a lot of damage. And at some point they buffed it to do 2 damage a second. I think they cut the duration quite a bit. But, obviously you're going to see the damage, especially if you get him in the middle of like a big army, right? If you give everything like, I don't know if it's like, I feel like it might be like 120 seconds or something at 2 damage. Maybe it's 90, 2 damage a second. So maybe you do 180 damage or something, but it's, I don't know. I forget the exact numbers, but it's a significant amount of damage. Here's where I don't know what this rallied over here. I did in fact send an Acolyte up here, and he was already actually building a town hall at this point. And again, this is really greedy because this is gonna, with a single peasant building this, right? Yeah, if he can stall me for like it probably takes 5 minutes with a slow build town hall because it takes. It's going to take way longer to finish this with just one peasant building it. And look, he's already built 6 guard towers, an arcane tower, and a farm, which, the farm, gives him supply, but he doesn't really, he's at 60 supply, he only has 36 food. So it's like he really needed that farm, but I think it was there just to scout. But anyways, the point is, these towers doing nothing to help him here. These towers, while momentarily they were, sort of getting some damage on the creeps and blah, 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 if I'm smart, I just avoid these towers. If I'm smart, I avoid these towers, and even like I didn't really have to consciously think about. I mean, obviously I'm aware fighting in towers is generally, especially clustered like this, even with no masonry upgrades, is a bad idea. So my army is more built. The undead army is typically more built to fight units. If you have enough destroyers and statues and fiends and blah blah blah, you can fight the towers fine, right? Even clustered if you have a big enough army. But there's no real reason for me to do that. I just look for the weak point, and if you spent too many resources on towers, I picked up a heal potion, a mana potion here from the shop before I came over here. Just like his only hope is to like somehow kill these heroes, and with the death coils, the Dreadlord and the Lich 5/3 on the levels, not realistically, not even realistic that he can kill those heroes, especially with Death Coil coming into the party and the statues. So yeah, this is just at that point it was just mop up duty, right? That Expo was never. I mean, I'd have to really give him a lot of time for that to pay off. Much less really decide the game, right? Yeah, if he gets that Expo up and I just don't ever get an Expo for, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes, right? And don't sort of beat his army somewhere or whatever. Do attack? Use the force him back and then use map control to creep everywhere, right? Then yeah, maybe that Expo, maybe the Expo can do something. Or if he's power building, and obviously that shifts the investment cost, but it also shifts forward the timeline where he will only need much less time to actually for it to pay itself off, right? Because you start mining faster because it finishes faster. So it's sort of front loads the cost to start mining quicker. So it shortens the timing window where I can punish him, but it makes the sort of resource gap much larger in that window. Or when I say resource gap, maybe the correct thing, even though I look at like units and stuff as resources in a way, maybe the thing is like army size, army value, I guess, or something like that. So, so generally we'll just say army size. The army size, gap should be much larger if he decides to power build that. Now, if he didn't build any towers over there, if he just had maybe one tower, and then he was going to expel like that, the cost is going to be significantly less. Yes, it will be much more vulnerable, right? But if he knows where I am, if he's kiting me and he's, he knows I'm not diving over there, now I can send like 3-4 ghouls over there. I have probably a decent amount of lumber. So he can't just assume that if I scout it, that it's going to go up even with just one tower. Or now two towers, like a guard tower or 2 guard towers could probably dissuade me from sending any ghouls. So, maybe he could get away with 2 guard towers and then expanding it, right? And then I'd actually have to bring more than just my lumber ghouls to deal with it probably. But, which again is all right there is closer to my base than his. So it's like, I sort of do think it's an interesting idea to build this, your sanctums in the center. It's a real risk, but if you finish them, you're leveraging your production buildings against sort of more area in the map, right? And it's sort of prime real estate near the tavern if you can hold it and stuff, right? Holding the tavern and sort of being able to sort of creep in basically 4 directions at those gold mines potentially is an interesting idea, right? Holding that is an interesting sort of concept about space control on the map, which some people don't really. They probably really good people or really good people, really good players in this game. Probably do have a pretty good grasp of the concept of like controlling space and specifically creeps and sort of valuable, like at the top of ramps or near a neutral shop or neutral merc camps or marketplace or tavern or whatever, goblin laboratories, right? All these mana fountains, etc. Right? People, especially good players, are going to understand that, and they will take steps to make sure they get their share or more of their share of the creeps. Certain camps with big items, which again typically go with strong creeps, so a lot of experience, gold, and like I say, good items tend to go along with that. Access to merc camps at certain timings can be massive. access to getting like a Goblin Shredder can be very efficient, right? And things like this. So Marketplace again gives you access to potentially game breaking items or game changing items. So and this is just a sort of a little bit of outside the box way to do that. Like you're sort of staking out some tower spots and some production spots, and and then if the enemy doesn't or isn't able to sort of deny you that, then you might be able just to more easily creep from around there. And then I'm like it was a little bit awkward for me trying to figure out like how to attack him there, because I knew his base probably was vulnerable, but he had the Watcher Ward. So if I want to dive towards his base, he's going to see that. He had the scout farms on, sort of the other angle, going the long way around or something, or going to that nearby spawn point for expansion. He had that sort of, something watching that, so to speak. And then with the Sanctums in the center, he saw me if I was going to come through the center. He had Arcane Sanctums there, and eventually had 2 guard towers towards the center, sort of nearby the other 2 gold mines in the center. So then it's like, well, what can I really creep? There was like the red camp at the bottom left, which would have been quite a challenge to creep, especially if he were to creep jack me. So I have to be careful about trying to do that. And even if he doesn't creep jack me, it's still a pretty buff camp. Now, if I have 3 heroes and statues and a destroyer and an A-bomb and I can generally do the creep camp. It won't take me too long, and I should be able to do it, quite efficiently without taking too much damage. And the damage that I do take, if I finish the camp, the Ogre Magi drops a Ruin of Healing, which is going to heal stuff quite significantly. So I don't know if it heals mechanical targets. I suspect it doesn't, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So that'd be interesting to know. But in any event, hopefully I'm not taking a bunch of damage on my statues anyway. But yeah, so that's something I could do. But he had already crept the shop. He got the big turtle at the orange camp, and he was about to get that entire camp. Which, if he denies that to me, it delays my level 2 on the Lich, I think. Was it 2 or 3? I think it was level 2. It denies me that experience though. So then it's like, well, now what do I creep? There's the other orange camp gold mine on the other side of his towers, which is much harder for me to contest. And then there's like the red camp at the top right. There's the far spawn. I have to go through like the center to get to it. So it was really awkward for me to sort of try to fight him near the center, right? I could really basically only do it for 2 reasons. One is I had a tech advantage on him. So the destroyers were really helpful against the sorceresses. And the other is my hero levels, or sorry, not my hero levels specifically, but the heroes that I picked were strong AoE heroes, right? I could throw a lot of damage at range and really hit his low hit point casters. Now, if he had a Blood Mage instead of an MK, his offensive potential would have been somewhat limited, but I think that Mana Siphon would have been pretty dangerous. And then he could, either Flame Strike or Banish. I had a Destroyer, so Banish probably wouldn't be that amazing, but in Flame Strike, when I have a small army and I'm and it's level 1, it's probably not that scary either, to be honest. And without the stun of Stormbolt, I wouldn't have needed something like the staff to save my hero. So, definitely there are pros and cons to the heroes. Obviously, I would say the MK is generally better. At that the timing that he comes out. So I wouldn't exactly recommend going the Blood Mage. I think it would have sort of played out a little bit interestingly, because if he can zone me with a Blood Mage and siphon my mana, then the Dreadlord's sort of deep damage output falls dramatically. But anyways, besides all that, I had a bunch of I could throw a bunch of damage at him with Karen Swarm and Nova, and he's clustered together. And then all I basically need to do is keep mana on my heroes, and his army is level 2 Karen Swarm, and possibly level 3 Karen Swarm and level 2 Nova. those are some really dangerous situations for his army. Then what does he do? Does he go knights? Does he go spellbreakers? Spellbreakers is sort of a natural thing because they don't get hit by destroyers, and they do feedback damage, so they're relatively actually pretty good against statues if they can land shots. They do normal damage, so they're not terrible against fiends. And they dodge, no, they dodge Death Coil if I've got it. They dodge Karen Swarm, Impale if that's the move, or Black Arrow. There's a lot of things they dodge from, and then the Destroyer attacks. They dodge those as well. So that's pretty good. What they're not very good against is they're somewhat weak against ghouls. It's not like ghouls just run them over, right? In equal food, ghouls probably would, but I'm not generally at that point gonna run. I'm not really gonna want to run around with a whole bunch of ghouls, right? They're very, what's the word? I won't say exploitable, but they're very sort of micro intensive, right? They're because they're very squishy. They're low hit points, low armor type unit, right? Without Ghoul Frenzy, and then maybe without a Holy Aura, the move speed is going to be you're going to need move speed to keep them out of harm's way frequently. And then something like a big Thunderclap, maybe retrace to Blizzard, all the magic damage, right? I don't really want to run around with the ghouls. Like, I'd rather run around with like one or two A bombs, or maybe even 3 A bombs, depending on the situation, with Disease Cloud, because ghouls don't have Disease Cloud. They're much more susceptible to big, like Thunderclap or Blizzard. They're much more susceptible to big AOE damage. If I just have 1 or 2 or 3 A bombs, yeah, Thunderclap still hits them, but you sort of shrug off the damage. They're still in there doing their damage. And Disease Cloud, the reduced movement speed or the reduced attack speed from Slow and Thunderclap and maybe stuns from Stormbolt. As long as you get into range of units with the A bombs with Disease Cloud, they're spreading the disease. So they maybe they're attacking Slow, and it's like, oh, it doesn't feel like their DPS is that great. But the Disease Cloud damage is really subtle, maybe, seems a little subtle, but it actually is quite strong. And you really sort of notice this if you're like an elf player with like archers or dryads or something, right? Normally the dryads are like magic units. Like, okay, dryads are, they're pretty nimble. They're a little bit squishy. But like if you're like hitting them with ghouls, they're not really all that. It doesn't seem like they're just getting run over by ghouls. But if you get an A-bomb or like a meat wagon with a Disease Cloud, and you start, basically getting his entire army of dryads afflicted with the Disease Cloud damage, it's going to really, really add up. And it doesn't, you just need like 1 or 2 A-bombs or like 1 meat wagon, and you can generally spread it pretty easily. Without much. Now, obviously, if they have a bunch of range units, you don't want to just be like attacking a Mountain King, and the range units are nowhere near, so they don't get Disease Cloud. So you have to make sure, as early as you get that Disease Cloud on them, generally the better it is. And then TPing is not like, okay, I TP away, I can, the damage is, done. You TP away, and the Disease Cloud is still there. Same with the Dryads. You're like, oh, let me run away from this battle. Well, you've got Disease Cloud, and then it's still hitting them with the damage. So, it sort of that effect, it sort of really adds up, right? And there's really nothing you can do about it except either not get afflicted with it. If you have air units, right, it's a little bit, they can still get hit with Disease Cloud from web, if you web them and stuff, but anyways, as I say, all that AoE is sort of forced into a weird scenario. Does he want to mass breakers? That generally doesn't work. Does he want to mass griffins? Destroyers are good against griffins. Fiends, relatively decent against griffins. It's a different tech tree, so he'll need an aviary. He'll need tier 3. He had a blacksmith, but if you just go mass casters, it's a little bit awkward that he actually made a blacksmith. Not sure what he was thinking if he was... rifles, that's right. He wanted to get some rifles. That makes sense. So I guess it's not that unusual. Rifle caster. It's just that he had more casters than rifles, as far as I could see. But anyways, though he'll need, if he doesn't have a lumber mill, which, again, he had one for the guard towers, and stuff. So he just needs to get an aviary, and then he needs to get tier 3. But again, these are cost, and these are timing issues where it's like, okay, if he's behind a whole tier in tech, it's a little bit awkward. There's that window where it's like, okay, can he defend himself without the griffins while he builds an aviary, while he techs, while he does this and that? And then he gets like 1 or 2 griffins. Is that enough? Probably not, because web and the nuke spells hit them as well. So now it does force me to get web, or it possibly forces me to get not forces me, but I could choose to go gargoyles instead, which is actually not a terrible idea with Vampiric Aura. They're really actually quite good at dealing with air units in the absence of something like web or ensnare or bats or mass towers. Right, his main was not mass towered, so he couldn't just retreat into his main base and be safe, and then mass up, whatever. He didn't have enough rifles to really contend. Now, Rifle Caster is quite strong against Garg, so it's kind of awkward. But if he's gonna, really transition into Griffins, then he probably won't have as many casters. So you get into that sort of balance, that dance of like, how do you balance your army, and it is, it is what it is. So, but anyways, I thought this game was pretty good. The guy's APM was decent. I think he probably was lagging if the previous game against him was any indication. I think we got a different server, most certainly, because my my ping was way lower in this game. Which makes me think his was probably way higher than it was in the other game. But anyways, yeah, I thought it was a pretty interesting game. Again, his strategy, building the sanctums where he did, I think it does leave his base a bit exposed. Building all those towers where he did definitely is a massive cost that did not pay off. The expo, resource-wise, he ended up, that's kind of, I guess our master repaired. I went to upkeep a little bit sooner, so there's about a 200 gold difference there. And so, what does he have? About 600. So then that drops to 400. I don't know if I had the acolytes off the gold mine that long. I don't think he actually finished his expo. I'm gonna go through the replay and see. I'm pretty doubtful that he finished it. Maybe he did finish it. I doubt it though. Just definitely doubt he. Well, no, yeah, he clearly didn't finish it. But yeah, definitely, and if he finished it, he had to get mine out of it. Like, so he needed to produce the workers and stuff. So yeah. This is the other thing. The AOE, like once you really level it, I mean, Vampiric Aura is quite good with ghouls and A-bombs, right? But and Gargs, but and the DK, blah blah blah. But the other thing is these AOE spells when they get leveled, sometimes when you like want to attack into the human's base, right? Especially if they don't have a lot of towers, they're going to be very vulnerable to this AOE harass. So if you can sneak your level, 3, 4, 5, Dreadlord and or maybe like level, whatever level Lich, right? If you get both of them in there, you can really snipe workers quite well. Or if you end up just pushing with your whole army, like one of the natural sort of weapons that humans use to defend themselves is going to be, a fair number, calling to arms, the lumber workers, which, can be anywhere from like 8 to 12, workers or whatever. So 12 seems like a lot for sure, but, it's a decent amount. But the problem is they die so fast, right? They have decent armor, right? But they have low hit points. So, level 2 Cannon Swarm, level 3 Cannon Swarm, level 1, 2, 3 Nova Destroyers, and really whatever units you have is going to, and then Disease Cloud, it's just going to ravage his economy completely if he has to pull it out to defend like this. And if he doesn't pull it out, you can still hit them with Cannon Swarm. So, and then their economy takes a massive hit. Right? So, you could say a similar thing if you were to get like, a level 3 MK or a level 3 Panda or something, or level 5 Panda into an undead base. But ghouls are the lumber workers, and they're a little bit sturdier than peasants. And you generally don't have like 8 ghouls harvesting lumber. So, you're trying to hit like a mix of like the gold workers and the lumber workers. the gold line is different from on undead because they're around the haunted gold mine. So, and then they can spread them out in different directions. They can move one, So AoE is still pretty, AoE or leveled heroes can still be quite dangerous, but yeah, there's just generally not going to be as many targets, and they're going to be, the lumber workers are going to be, more sturdy because their hit points are like 120 more or something than the peasants, right? So, whatever, and then they're going to be on blight, so the blight healing is useful. So yeah, but anyways, I mean, workers are vulnerable. Most of the races workers are vulnerable in some, sense compared to everything else. So yeah, but anyways, like I say, I think this game was pretty interesting. The guy, I assume he had bad ping here, so he could be a better player than it appeared here, for sure. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty interesting game, and hopefully you found it informative, somewhat entertaining. Some I don't know how a Dreadlord Lich is in terms of meta strategy. The standard strategy of high level play. I don't think it's probably not the case. Probably DK, if you go Dreadlord even first, probably DK is the automatic pick. I think I've seen some people go Lich first. I don't know if that was against human. It wouldn't surprise me if it was against human. Lich sort of serves a similar function as the Dreadlord, except the Lich is ranged. Either Frost Armor or Dark Ritual. You can probably sort of sustain your creeping. I don't know. Vampiric Gore sustains it with healing on melee units and melee heroes, and then Dark Ritual sustains it with mana regeneration. So you can sort of churn through. You can use Novas a little bit more liberally, I would say, with a leveled up Lich because of Dark Ritual. And then the fact that the Lich is ranged, so it makes it a little bit easier and not quite as predictable on what you want to, like what you can target, right? If you have a melee hero, just like melee units, it's kind of obvious when you are in the middle of a battle what you're gonna focus because you have to run to it, right? So it's harder to sort of surprise them, and it's just changing targets, right? A lot of times you have to run, if it's ranged units and stuff, like a melee hero or melee unit is running, from here to here to here. You don't want to be just running around a lot in battles though, so if the Lich can sit in the back and just, start hitting something, if they move out of range, just change targets, hit something, that's pretty good. But the one downside of the Lich that I will say, if you're going to go the Lich, specifically if it ends up in some kind of air battle, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble against mechanical targets, because Nova does not hit mechanical targets. So mass flying machines becomes a much more dangerous sort of possibility. Now, if you get the Dreadlord second, maybe the Pain the third or whatever, right? You can still maybe have a weapon against that, but obviously a higher level Karen Swarm is going to be better than high level Nova against that specific strategy. Also, tanks, right? If it comes to tanks, right? Karen Swarm again is going to be much better than Nova against tanks. Now, Karen Swarm doesn't come with a debuff; it's just pure damage. So, Nova, I think, is uncapped damage. It's basically only capped by the number of units that are in range in terms of the damage number, so that's pretty good. And it comes with a significant debuff. So, outside of fighting against mechanical stuff, right, and the way Nova hits versus the way Karen Swarm hits is different. Like, Karen Swarm is like a sort of a long range, sort of cone type deal, I think. And Nova is like sort of a circular, like around whatever you target. So they sort of function differently that way. But anyways, Nova is probably more dangerous in a lot of circumstances, especially early to mid game, because early to mid game there's not really that many mechanical things to worry about. But then you can run, depending on the matchup, statues, demos, glaive throwers, flying machines, tanks. Trying to think of anything else. But yeah, it's mostly flying machines that you want to be worried about. And then possibly tanks. Tanks can be very irritating, but in solo, the timing for tanks is kind of weird. Like it's like boom or bust. Like if you go tanks, you could either do really well with the tanks, or they could just be sort of like awkward and then just like a lot of wasted resources. right? So they're good against buildings, and if somebody's going to choose to fight air against upgraded tanks, right, that's generally a losing proposition. But so if you get in those spots where you can get there, yeah, tanks can do pretty well, but they don't they don't do they don't really fight against anything else, right? Ground armies, heroes, they can't really do anything against that stuff. Um, so yeah. But anyways, Nova versus Carrion Swarm in those spots, very different. But anyways, that didn't really come up here. He didn't make any mechanical stuff. It didn't really go to an air battle. Uh, if he's going to try to go flying machines against destroyers, I didn't really have mass destroyers there, but if he did that, I was set up with a level 4 and then eventually 5 Dreadlord, so I wasn't super concerned about that being a counter. So yeah, I think a lot of people like Knight Fly Machine is like sort of maybe an ideal army comp super late game against a lot of undead armies. Um, the Knights for the fiends and stuff, and ground and hero attacking, and maybe base harassing. And then the fly machines with upgrades, they can hit buildings too, but they're mostly to keep the air, clear of destroyers, right? So that's, in the event that that's an issue, maybe a Panda second would be a little bit better. But Panda second is, Breath of Fire is just raw damage. Drunken Haze isn't, but it doesn't hit mechanical targets either. So, and it's quite mana intensive, and it's another non-ranged hero. So, but yeah, specifically against buildings and flying machines and tanks, the Panda sort of wins out. The Panda has a better ultimate than the Lich, arguably, in a lot of spots. I guess I should say a lot of spots, because Death and Decay could be pretty good against some mass tower base or whatever, but it's also a channeling spell. Infernal is also, I think, much better than the Liches in most circumstances, right? It fights better against armies. It's not channeling, so less exploitable and everything. So, but anyways, that's going to be the end of this audio. ScryMind signing out.